Long ago, in a forest where the trees whispered their secrets to the wind, there lived two birds who were bound by affection. One was a wise old bird, her feathers faded with age, but her eyes glowing with the light of experience. The other was a young parrot, curious and restless, forever fascinated by the ways of the world. Whenever the parrot's heart felt heavy, he would perch beside the old bird and beg, "Please, tell me a story, one that soothes my soul and teaches me something worth carrying in life. A story that people can learn from, because isn't it the duty of the wise to guide others with their knowledge?" The old bird, smiling gently, replied, "My dear parrot, I shall tell you a story today unlike any other. If one listens closely and lives by its lessons, poverty will never haunt them. The tale may sound simple, but within it lies the secret to transforming misery into abundance." The parrot leaned forward, his eyes shining with anticipation. And so the old bird began her tale. In an ancient town, there lived a woman so poor that even a full stomach was a dream too far for her. She had 6 sons, all thin from hunger. Never once had she known the comfort of fine clothes or the taste of a proper meal. Every day she and her children worked at the house of a cunning moneylender. For their labor, the miser paid her nothing more than 3 handfuls of barley grains each day. 3 handfuls for 7 mouths. With this, she tried to prepare food, but the meal was never enough. Most nights, her children went to bed still hungry. The moneylender knew their weakness. He knew they were illiterate, unskilled, and too frightened to resist. Like a snake that preys on frogs trapped in a hole, he devoured their strength little by little, giving them just enough to survive, but never enough to rise above their misery. And so, the family remained bound to his service, unable to escape. One evening, after returning home exhausted, the woman bent over her little clay stove to prepare supper. Just then, an elderly neighbor, an old motherly figure, knocked on her door. She looked at the woman with pity and said, "Daughter, why do you tire yourself so much every day? You have 6 sons, yet you bear all the burdens alone. Why not bring your daughter-in-law home to help you? A new hand in the household could share your work and bring some comfort." The poor woman sighed deeply. "Mother, do you not see our state? My eldest son is married, yes, but his wife has never come to live with us. How can I call her here? We have no roof strong enough to keep out the rain, no bed to offer her, not even enough food for ourselves. Why should we drag another into our suffering?" The old neighbor shook her head. "Child, excuses will not feed your family. Sometimes help arrives only when you make room for it. Your daughter-in-law is already bound to your home. Call her here. Let her share your struggle." But the poor woman wept. "Even if I wished to, how could my son go to fetch her? He has no decent clothes to wear when visiting his wife's family. How can he appear in rags before them?" The neighbor smiled and placed a kind hand on her shoulder. "Do not worry. Come with me." She led the poor woman to her own house and brought out a set of her son's clothes. "Take these. Let your boy wear them. Send him to bring back his wife." With gratitude in her eyes, the poor woman accepted. That evening, her eldest son donned the borrowed garments and set off to his in-laws' home. There, to his surprise, he was treated with honor. They fed him well, kept him for 2 nights, and then allowed him to return with his young bride. But as they neared the village, shame struck him. He thought of their broken hut, the crumbling roof, the scattered ashes of their many small stoves, the ragged mats on the floor. How could I let my wife step into such a place? So instead of taking her home, he quietly led her to the house of the kind neighbor and left her there. The young bride, unaware of the truth, assumed this was her husband's home. That night she waited, puzzled as to why he had left her, but believing he would return in the morning. The next day, however, when she learned the truth that the beautiful house belonged not to her husband, but to another, her heart tightened. And yet, she did not weep or complain. Instead, she asked to be taken to her real home. What she saw there broke her heart. A house darkened by soot, its roof half fallen, its beds broken, ashes scattered everywhere. Hunger and despair filled the air. Tears welled in her eyes, but she did not turn away. In that moment, she made a silent vow. This is my home now. If it is broken, I will mend it. If it is poor, I will enrich it. If it is drowning in sorrow, I will bring light. And so, dear listener, the old bird whispered. A new chapter began, not just for the poor woman, but for her entire family. The parrot blinked in wonder. What happened next? He asked eagerly. The old bird smiled. Ah, patience, my young friend. The true power of wisdom is revealed step by step. What the daughter-in-law did next would transform their world forever. The young bride did not lose herself to despair. Instead, she looked around at the ruin she had entered and said to herself, "A home may be poor, but if there is order and purpose, poverty can be transformed. A family may be broken, but if guided with wisdom, it can become whole." She knew that words alone could not change fate. Action was needed. So, quietly, she began. The first lesson, order in the household. She noticed that the family used 6 separate stoves, one for each son. Every evening, each boy gathered a few sticks, lit a fire, and cooked his own portion of food. But the flames consumed too much wood. The grain was cooked wastefully, and time was lost in the confusion. She spoke gently to her mother-in-law. Why do we scatter our efforts like this? Firewood is scarce. Grain is precious. If we join our strength and cook together in one stove, we will save both time and food. The mother-in-law hesitated. But my sons are used to their own ways. The young woman smiled. Let us try. Just once. So they built a single fire and placed one pot upon it. To everyone's surprise, the meal was larger, tastier, and ready in less time. That night, for the first time in many months, all 7 ate together, not separately. The warmth of unity filled the house. The old bird paused in her story and looked at the parrot. Do you see, little one? The first secret of abundance is to end waste and bring order to chaos. The second lesson, clothing and dignity. The next morning, the daughter-in-law washed the tattered clothes of the family. She patched holes with scraps of cloth and stitched torn hems with patient hands. When her brothers-in-law put them on, they looked almost respectable. It was a small change, but their eyes shone brighter. She said softly, even the poor can walk with dignity. Clothes do not need to be rich, only neat and clean. The third lesson, one voice in the household. Soon after, a neighbor came knocking, asking to borrow a small measure of grain. The eldest son quickly agreed, though there was little to give. Later that day, another neighbor asked for firewood, and a younger brother gave it freely, though the pile was nearly gone. The daughter-in-law watched quietly, then gathered the family and said, kindness is good, but when each of you gives without consulting the other, we may find ourselves with nothing. A household must have one voice, or else it will fall apart. Her words sank deep. From that day, no decision was made without first consulting the mother. Order and respect began to take root. The fourth lesson, the discipline of work fee. Daughter-in-law rose before dawn and worked with her hands ceaselessly. She wove baskets, ground grain, fetched water, and tended the small patch of earth near their hut. At first, the brothers-in-law were ashamed to see her labor so diligently, while they remained idle. Soon, one joined her, then another. Slowly, the whole family began to work together. The young woman would say, with a gentle smile, labor is not shameful. Idleness is. Even a poor man can rise if his hands are never still. The fifth lesson, faith and gratitude. One evening, after a long day of toil, the family gathered to eat their modest meal. The daughter-in-law paused and offered thanks to the earth, to the grain, to the unseen blessings that had allowed them to eat together. Her words touched them. For years, they had only complained of what they lacked. Now, for the first time, they felt gratitude for what little they had. And gratitude, like a seed watered daily, began to grow into contentment. The old bird paused in her tale and let the silence linger. The parrot tilted his head. So, these 5 lessons, order, dignity, unity, labor, and gratitude, were they enough to change the family's fate? The old bird's eyes sparkled. Ah, my little one, wisdom is a lamp. but a lamp must be lit every day. The daughter-in-law's wisdom had planted seeds. Soon, those seeds would bear fruit so rich, so plentiful, that even the moneylender who had enslaved them would be left astonished. The parrot's feathers ruffled with excitement. Tell me what happened next. The old bird spread her wings as if to embrace the horizon. Patience, my friend. The story is long, and fate reveals itself slowly. What came next was the true turning point of their lives. The days passed, and the once broken household began to shine with quiet strength. The young bride's 5 lessons, order, dignity, unity, labor, and gratitude, were no longer words. They had become the rhythm of daily life. The single stove now burned steadily, sending out warmth instead of smoke. The patched clothes gave the brothers courage to walk into the village without shame. The family, once scattered in will, now spoke with one voice. Their hands, once idle, now wove baskets, tilled soil, and crafted tools. And every night, before the meal, they bowed their heads in gratitude. Slowly, like drops filling a jar, abundance returned to their lives. One morning, the daughter-in-law gathered the brothers. Let us not depend only on the moneylenders. Handful of barley, we have land, though neglected. If we plant it together, it will answer us. They worked as never before, plowing, sowing, watering. When the harvest came, though small, it was enough to feed them for weeks. They no longer needed to stretch their hands for every grain the miser tossed at them. Soon, their baskets found buyers in the market. With each coin they earned, hope rose higher. The moneylender noticed. Strange, he muttered. They used to bow before me for 3 handfuls of grain. Why do their faces shine now? Why do they no longer look at me with fear? He tried to tighten his grip. One evening he called the poor woman and said with a sneer, "You owe me your labor. If you work less for me, your debt will grow. Do not forget you are nothing without my barley." But the poor woman, once trembling before him, now stood tall. "We no longer live by your barley," she said firmly. "We have learned to live by our own hands." The moneylender's eyes burned with anger. Yet behind that anger was fear, the fear of losing his power. One day, the miser hatched a cruel plan. He offered them a loan of more grain, saying, "Take this and plant more. Next harvest, return double." The brothers, still inexperienced, were tempted. But the daughter-in-law stopped them. "Beware," she warned. "A loan that promises abundance hides chains behind it. If we take more than we need, we will again be his slaves." Her words prevailed. They refused the loan and worked only with what their hands could truly manage. That season, their harvest doubled not because of borrowed grain, but because of careful labor and unity. The villagers began to notice. How did this poor family, once starving, now walk with such dignity? Their home, once in ruins, now stands repaired. Their fields, once barren, now bloom. Some came to ask for advice, and the daughter-in-law shared her lessons freely. Others, weary of the moneylender's cruelty, stopped working for him and followed the family's path of self-reliance. The miser's grip on the village weakened. His fields lay unattended, his storehouse emptied, for no one wished to serve him any longer. One evening, hungry and desperate, he passed by the family's home. He saw them eating together, their laughter echoing like music. For the first time, he tasted the bitterness of his own greed. The old bird's lesson, the old bird's voice softened as she ended the tale. "And so, my little parrot, the poorest of families rose not by gold, not by miracles, but by wisdom and unity. The miser, who once enslaved them, fell not by violence, but by his own greed." The parrot's eyes were wide with wonder. "So poverty can truly be defeated?" Old bird nodded. "Yes, poverty is not only the lack of food or coin. It is the lack of order, dignity, unity, labor, and gratitude. Restore these, and even the smallest grain will multiply into abundance." The parrot whispered, almost to himself, "And greed destroys its own master." The old bird smiled. "You have understood well." Thus ends the story of the poor family and the wise daughter-in-law. but the echo of its lessons, like a bird's song at dawn, remains, guiding all who listen. The parrot sat in silence, his small chest rising and falling with the weight of the tale he had just heard. For a long while, neither he nor the old bird spoke. The breeze rustled the leaves above them, as if the forest itself wished to join. The conversation died at last. The parrot asked, almost in a whisper, "Grandmother, why do such stories matter? They are of another time, another place. What do they mean for us, who live here and now?" The old bird closed her eyes, as though listening, not to the parrot, but to the echo of centuries. "Asterisk, my child," she began, "poverty is not only the emptiness of the stomach. True poverty is when a family loses its sense of order, when pride crumbles, when unity breaks, when hands lie idle, when gratitude dies. The miser thought himself rich, for his storehouse overflowed with grain. Yet he was poorer than the poor. Woman he enslaved, for she still carried patience, dignity, and faith in her heart. Wealth and poverty are not measured by what one holds in the hand, but by what one carries in the spirit." The parrot tilted his head, as though trying to drink in every word. Asterisk the 5 pillars of renewal. The old bird lifted one wing, as if counting invisible truths. "Remember the 5 lessons of the daughter-in-law. Order, for a house divided against itself cannot stand. Dignity, for even rags, when worn with pride, are garments of honor. Unity, for when voices join, no burden is too heavy. Labor, for idle hands weave only webs of despair. Gratitude, for a grateful heart turns a single grain into a feast. These 5 are like roots of a tree. If they are strong, storms may come, but the tree will not fall." Lessons for today. The parrot thought of the villages he had flown over, some filled with laughter, others with quarrels. He thought of men who owned gold, yet slept in restlessness, and of children who had nothing but still played joyfully under the sun. The old bird seemed to read his thoughts. "Yes, little one, the story is not only of the past. Look around. There are still moneylenders today, though they wear different faces. Some are merchants who trap men in debt. Others are habits that enslave the mind: greed, envy, anger, despair. And there are still poor families, not only poor in wealth, but poor in love, poor in patience, poor in wisdom. For them too, the daughter-in-law's lessons remain a lamp in the darkness." Asterisk the parrot asked, "But grandmother, the family never fought the miser with fists or fire. Was that not weakness?" The old bird's eyes gleamed. "No, my child. It was strength of the highest kind. They conquered not by striking their enemy down, but by rising above his power. They turned inward, and from within grew a force stronger than fear. Do you not see? The greatest victory is not when your enemy falls. It is when your enemy no longer has power over you." Asterisk the forest grew quiet, as if holding its breath. The old bird spread her wings, fragile yet radiant with wisdom. "Little one, carry this story as you fly. Tell it not only to parrots and sparrows, but also to men and women who walk the earth. For though centuries pass, the laws of the heart do not change. Where there is disorder, bring harmony. Where there is shame, restore dignity. Where there is division, plant unity. Where there is idleness, awaken labor. Where there is complaint, teach gratitude. Do this, and you will see miracles greater than gold." The parrot's eyes shone with tears, though he did not fully understand why. He bowed his head, and in that moment, the forest felt less lonely, as if one more voice had joined the eternal chorus of wisdom. And so the story ended not as a tale of the past, but as a mirror for the present. For those who listen deeply, the song of the old bird still echoes in the wind, reminding every heart that true wealth is born not from what we possess, but from how we live.